morning and welcome to Morning Movie News. Speaking of news, this is going to be a big week for Beyond the Trailer with some big changes, mostly tomorrow, but the first one is actually today, and that's with the structure of Morning Movie News. I'm switching it from 3 stories a day to 2, and then of course the viewer question. And the reason I'm doing this is to make the show a little more wieldy on 2 fronts. One, I want to make sure it goes up on time, and it's become quite difficult to render the episode because these days they're running 20 to 25 minutes, and I'm just having a very hard time getting it up on schedule, and I would like it to go up on schedule, so I thought this might be one way to make that happen. And then on the other front, I'm very respectful of your time as well, and I think that a 20-minute episode, that runs 20 minutes tops, is a little more wieldy in your day as well. It'll still have the length that I know many of you enjoy, but, again, you'll get it when you're supposed to get it, and I think it'll be a little bit easier to swallow. Now, of course, this could be a temporary change. I am always open to discussion on BTT in the comments down below, and please let me know what you think of this change. And also, keep in mind, I think there'll be some more, a new perspective, I guess, some more news I was going to say. There'll be more news tomorrow and a new perspective on how you can view this tomorrow. So stay tuned for that as well. But let's move on to today's episode. The first story, of course, is the big news about Ant-Man. Finally, about a month after Edgar Wright dropped out of the film, really leaving Marvel in the lurch, Marvel finally has a replacement. Now, of course, it's way down their wish list of talent, but at least they can close the book on this controversy. Or can they? I think that's the first big question about this story that I think still hovers over the Ant-Man film, and that's whether or not the controversy over Edgar Wright will go away. Now, some of you, in defense of Marvel, said, it's a very small group of people who care about Edgar Wright, and I think most people just want to see Marvel produce a good movie. But then I think you really have to remember why Edgar Wright would do this. Why would Edgar Wright hurt his career to such a degree? I don't think any other studio is going to be happy that he left Marvel, as I said, in the lurch like this at the last minute, deep in pre-production, just about to go into production, and that means to begin shooting. So I think they'd be very wary to hire Edgar Wright after that. And then, of course, he has a very poor box office track record, which Ant-Man was supposed to fix. So I think, to some degree, Edgar Wright maybe should have stayed on, and I think that'll be a question that we'll get an answer to, not shortly, but in time, because I don't know if he'll be able to find another project that could serve as his validation, or maybe some ways revenge against Marvel for what they did to him. And I think he must feel that way. He must feel that strongly to have dropped off the film. So that's the other big thing that we have to wonder. Why did Edgar Wright do this? Why would he make such a bold move? And I think that a lot of it has to do, of course, we know it was with the rewrites on the script, and that he and Joel Cornish had been working on a script for Ant-Man for pretty much 8 years, and now at the last minute, Marvel was having outside people come in and rewrite their work, and they had to just take it. Now, not only is that upset to see your creative voice steamrolled by who you might deem studio shills, I guess as Edgar Wright probably must have seen it, but what do you think of the fact that you have a film that's about to go into production still being rewritten after 8 years of working on the script? That is indeed very troubling news indeed. And apparently, it's still being rewritten because even though I said they were way down their wish list and who they ended up getting as a director, they got someone a little higher up to at least commit to the project as a writer, and that's Adam McKay. He, I think, was probably their first choice. About a weekend ago, that was the big speculation that he was going to hop on the project. And Adam McKay did admit to taking meetings at Marvel, but he said, unfortunately, my schedule is just too busy. I have too many other commitments. I cannot direct this film. But apparently he's going to help rewrite the script, at the very last minute. But I think McKay, regardless of what this says about Ant-Man as a project, should have taken the job because this gives him a relationship with Marvel. He's their savior. He's come at the last minute to save them. Well, at least hopefully, although Adam McKay can always point to, it was just too late. I did the best I could. And he'll always be seen, I think, in a good light by Marvel. And when his schedule does clear up, perhaps he'll get a Marvel film. He will be able to helm one. I thought Anchorman 2, which he made with Will Ferrell last year, was very, very good. Surprisingly sophisticated. Not only was it hilarious, but I thought it was a scathing commentary and a very true commentary on the state of the current news business, which is actually, unfortunately, more of a business these days. It's concerned more with ratings than the truth. And I thought that it was a great movie. And as I said, surprisingly sophisticated. sophisticated. So I think maybe McKay is ready to move on to non-Will Ferrell properties. And of course, when a director moves on to these big name pictures, they become something of a celebrity themselves, which would be very nice for McKay because he's still the behind-the-scenes half of the McKay-Ferrell duo. And even though he makes all of Ferrell's movies with him, I think he's still not largely known to the general public, which is a shame. I think that the people in front of the camera being the only stars associated with the film is really a tired, old cliche at this point. I'm glad to see us moving away from it, and I think it's harmful to movies, not just business-wise, but creatively, because I think it upsets the power balance as to who's the draw to the movie. I think if behind-the-scenes talent can be a draw, look what's happening with John Green over on The Fault in Our Stars. With him being such a big draw, they're like, don't touch his words, because people want to see that in the final product. And that really, I think, saved a lot of the integrity of the Fault in Our Stars script, which is very good. But back to Ant-Man. So Adam McKay is staying on to at least work on the script. But so who's directing? Well, down at the end, it was down to Peyton Reed and David Wayne. And I actually think David Wayne would have been a better choice because he would have satisfied the people who are upset about what happened with Edgar Wright. And I think he's more in the Edgar Wright kind of wheelhouse in terms of quirkiness. Peyton Reed, though, is very much, again, a studio shill, I think, to some degree. Not someone with a creative voice. Very uninspired, in my opinion. His big breakout movie was Bring It On. That was also a big breakout movie for Kirsten Dunst, of course. Then he went on to Down with Love, which was a flop for him. And I think it really stalled his career after Bring It On. That was, of course, was the Ewan McGregor, Renee Zellweger 1950s musical romance. Then he did The Breakup, but I think that was more successful for the are they dating, aren't they dating, behind-the-scenes drama for Jennifer Aniston and Vince Vaughn. And then, of course, he did Yes Man, which I think is that and The Breakup are probably the most successful movies for him. And I think he ended on a good note before he really moved to television. That's where Peyton Reed has been the last few years. But I think that Yes Man succeeded because fans hoped it would be another Liar Liar, which of course we all know it wasn't. It did not live up to that original Jim Carrey film. Still one of the best films Jim Carrey has ever made. I highly recommend you watch it if you have not. But so Peyton Reed, as you can see, Yes Man, The Breakup, Down with Love, Bring It On, not the kind of person you would think could do a great job with the property. Now, a number of you have pointed out that the Russo brothers came from a comedic background with Yumi and Dupree and Welcome to Collinwood, and they really delivered with Captain America the Winter Soldier. That had phenomenal action sequences. And I think that part of that reason was because Marvel gave such a great second unit to them, really great backup. And I think that's one of the reasons Brad Bird was able to make the transition to live action successfully as well. He had great backup. He had great live action people who were experienced working with him. Whereas, as we've discussed before, Andrew Stanton just brought over his Pixar team and nobody knew what they were doing when it came to live action. So if they can surround Peyton Reed with enough good people who are experienced, maybe Ant-Man will turn out okay. But there's more. There was another big surprise with this announcement of Peyton Reed and Adam McKay as the new team behind Ant-Man. And that was a synopsis. This is the new official synopsis for Ant-Man. And get ready, it's weird. So it says, armed with the astonishing ability to shrink in scale but increase in strength, con man Scott Lang, Paul Rudd, must embrace his inner hero and help his mentor, Dr. Hank Pym, Michael Douglas. So he must help him to protect the secret behind his spectacular Ant-Man suit from a new generation of towering threats. Against seemingly insurmountable obstacles, Pym and Lang must plan and pull off a heist that will save the world. Very interesting development. Now, I'm not particularly familiar with the Ant-Man character because it never really spoke to me. I did like what Brian Michael Bendis did with the character for Secret Invasion and then the resulting Kree invasion. I thought that Skrull's invasion. I thought that was phenomenally well done. Very clever use of the character. So that reinvigorated my interest in Hank Pym. But I don't know a lot about him besides the fact he smacked his wife around. But I don't believe that Scott Lang started out as a con man. So I'm a little concerned as to that development and the fact that it's another rogue. I mean, I think on our initially we had gotten the idea that Scott Lang would be a family man. They were casting his daughter, Cassie Lang. I don't see any mention of that character anymore here. And so I'm surprised they would go this other route of another charming rogue. How many charming rogues can the Marvel Cinematic Universe have? They've already got Robert Downey Jr. as their King Rogue, as Tony Stark. Then, of course, Chris Pratt is playing their intergalactic rogue with Star-Lord, a.k.a. Peter Quill, who also, by the way, is something of a con man thief. So that's another duplication here with Scott Lang. And then, of course, I think there's some chance that Stephen Strange could be going that route with the possible casting of Jared Leto, although they did say over the weekend that they're considering now Benedict Cumberbatch or Tom Hardy for the lead role. I actually think Jared Leto, now that I think about it, I would prefer him to both those choices. But if Jared Leto can't be a charming rogue as well, Johnny Depp light, so to speak, as I said when I initially covered that news that they were considering Jared Leto, what can he really bring to the project? I don't know. It's a very interesting situation, and I just don't know how. I mean, I would like to see some variation in types of characters in these films, as well as settings and superpowers. And then, of course, I do like the idea, though, that Hank Pym looks like he's going to be a big role. It should be. Hank Pym, of course, is the original Ant-Man, and I would love to see Michael Douglas have something to do in this movie. Robert Redford was very good in Captain America: The Winter Soldier, but I think he was undeniably sidelined in the film and had a very small role, integral as it might have been. But it wasn't what we'd like to see. I think it was an older actor cutting loose and really being part of one of these action movies. I think that would be exciting. Then, of course, there's the Towering Threats line. That maybe talks about, the Pym particles can go both ways for those of you who are not familiar with them. They can go either make you small or very big. So I think having these towering threats is an interesting development, which I don't recall from the comics. So that's another deviation from the source material, something that Marvel seems to be getting more and more comfortable with. So far, so good, but it's always risky changing these things up. And as I said, their loyalty to the brand and the source material has been a big part of their equation, which has led to their success. But we'll see who those towering threats are, and I think that it's interesting to keep everything in the same vein with the Pym particles. That'll be kind of like a direction for a film that we haven't seen. At least it won't be your typical, I'm fighting another villain with totally different superpowers, kind of it's becoming almost a cliche in these superhero movies, and it might be hurting them at this point. Some of you even said you're suffering from superhero movie fatigue, so maybe a film that has very clear rules will be good. The other thing that surprises me, this is going to be a heist movie, really the Marvel Universe's Ocean's 11. Now, I think that some of you were excited about the fact, and I was too, that Captain America was almost a political thriller first, and maybe Marvel can find real success in really going with, established genres with their comic book movies, and that will also create a sense of freshness and diversity to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. A good point I felt many of you brought up with Stephen Strange, the Doctor Strange movie. Why not do a Marvel horror movie? That could be potentially very exciting, and I agree with you when I heard some of you point that out. So I'm all up for a heist movie, as long as this movie doesn't seem too small. Yes, I went there. We'll see. It seems a little small to me right now, though, I have to admit, with this talent, and with this script, this outline. So I'm curious to what you guys think. All right, so that is the first story of the day. All right, the second story is Jennifer Lawrence. Now, a lot of you, when I talked about Oscar frontrunners, the early frontrunners last week, a number of you, to my surprise, were like, where is Serena? Why didn't you include Serena? That is a big Jennifer Lawrence movie. Surely, it's been delayed so long, it will come out this year in Oscar contention. It already has some release dates overseas. And I would say to you that it's not coming out. And I would be surprised if it ever makes those foreign release dates as well. And I did some digging into this because so many of you wanted to know the answer, so I wanted to deliver. And I think the answer is partially what I said about the talent wanting to hide it. It's almost, no, actually, wait, it's entirely about the talent wanting to hide it. I was trying to be nice here and give the benefit of the doubt, but in this story, I think Jennifer Lawrence actually comes off not so great. But let's discuss. Now, Jennifer Lawrence, another thing that made me want to cover this is that she was in the news last week for setting up the release date for her third film with David O. Russell, which is going to be the story of the inventor of the Miracle Mop. It was a single Long Island mom, and she was so successful she became a QVC star, and the movie is going to focus on her rise to power and how power corrupts, I'm assuming, etc. Your typical kind of biography about that kind of movie. We've seen it before, but not with a female lead, so that could be very interesting. And of course, David O. Russell and Jennifer Lawrence have been quite successful in their partnerships. He got her an Oscar for Silver Linings Playbook. He almost got her one for American Hustle, if not for Lupita Nyong'o. And I think that the Miracle Mop movie, as you can see, very cleverly plays off of Jennifer Lawrence's role in American Hustle. It's almost making a movie about that character. She even had a great classic scene where she was singing while cleaning her house. So that seems to me like that they're really going to try and build on that and maybe get that Oscar, that second Oscar, after all. The release date is set for December 25th, 2015. That is a very strong Oscar date, and it makes the clear announcement that this is an Oscar contender. And I think it definitely is with that talent behind the camera. So that's, I think, what Jennifer Lawrence is focusing on, and she has a very well-crafted career. Between working with David O. Russell and her Hunger Games movies, she is at the top of the world, at least the top of Hollywood's world. And so I think a movie like Serena, she honestly just doesn't want to have it see the light of day. And it turns out she's actually the one holding up the movie. Now, the rumor is that she actually will not come in and re-record some of the dialogue from the movie that was ruined on set, on location, from airplane noises. So, of course, this takes place during the Great Depression, when there were no airplanes really flying overhead. So they can't release the movie until this is fixed. But Jennifer Lawrence simply will not come in. Now, her official reasoning apparently is that she's just too busy. She's too busy making Mockingjay, she's too busy with X-Men, she just doesn't have time to re-record this dialogue, which I think is totally incorrect. It doesn't take a lot of time to re-record dialogue for a movie, and she's in all these big production cities, like down south. I believe she's in Atlanta, actually, for Mockingjay. And they have a lot of facilities, post-production facilities in Atlanta. She could easily take just half a day or one of her days off to help this movie, but she will not do it. Why? And she's actually really frustrating the producers, and there were some photos that leaked actually just recently, and that was from very exasperated producers who were like, I want my movie to be released. I have a movie that stars Jennifer Lawrence and Bradley Cooper, and I can't have it see the light of day. And no U.S. distributor has picked it up. That's why it doesn't have a U.S. distribution date. Now, why does Jennifer Lawrence not want anyone to see this movie? I think it's because while on paper it probably looked like a really great role, she plays a strong female businesswoman who goes mad. It's almost like her There Will Be Blood. And I think that's probably what she was thinking when she signed on for the project. But I think probably when they saw it and come to life, they realized it wasn't a good idea. Her character, I don't want to give away too much of the movie. You can easily read online about what it's about if you're interested. But her character actually does kill a lot of people in her pursuit of power and money and fortune. But then she also tries to kill a child. And I think that is just a really unsympathetic turn of events. And I think that even someone as likable as Jennifer Lawrence with her fan base, I don't think anybody wants to see that. So I think that's why she's trying to make sure this film doesn't see the light of day, which is a shame because, her fans really want to see it. And it looks like they spent quite a bit of money on it. And it looks like at least it has good production values. But, I think Jennifer Lawrence clearly feels she made a mistake, and she doesn't want it to hamper her career. And I don't think Bradley Cooper wants it out there either, because while Jennifer Lawrence doesn't have any Oscar contenders this year, although she doesn't want a black eye, obviously, from a movie that maybe people will think is horrible, Bradley Cooper does have an Oscar contender with that Cameron Crowe movie with Emma Stone, Alec Baldwin, and Bill Murray, which I did showcase in my Oscar Frontrunners video. So that's, I think, why you're not going to see Serena and why you haven't seen it and why you probably never will. All right, so those are the two stories of the day. And we're already at 17 minutes. I'm trying to keep this down. It's a process. But let's get on to today's viewer question. This is from J.P. Rowe. And J.P. Rowe actually wrote me a very long email, and so I'm only including part of it to get his question in here because it applies to Edge of Tomorrow, which was a big movie over the weekend that a lot of us really, really enjoyed, myself included. But J.P. Rowe points out something very important about the movie, which I think is worth discussing. So he says, I watched your review about Edge of Tomorrow and looked up the information on the source material, the novel All You Need Is Kill. And I was curious about why you think the main character needed to be changed. You've been talking about whitewashing in the media, and didn't this film do that? There are plenty of Asian Americans, so why couldn't one of them play the role Tom Cruise played? Although the slight nod to the original character's name is kind of cute, Cage Kaiji. It seems like Hollywood is scared to move past lead characters who aren't white males and only cast people of different races as supporting characters. Why is it okay to change some things but not others? Great question, J.P. Rowe. I think that you have a very good point here, and I think it's it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that Hollywood needs to start fixing now if we're ever going to see this eventually come to fruition. Now, with Edge of Tomorrow, I'm sure that they thought having a white lead, who's Tom Cruise no less, would really help the movie. But ironically, or perhaps as justice, Tom Cruise, I think, actually ended up hurting this movie because audiences just don't trust him anymore with their movie ticket money. So Tom Cruise was supposed to help the movie, and they whitewashed the role seemingly for nothing. Now, would it have been nice to see some diversity in other areas of the film? Yes, and the film doesn't even deliver there. Now, unfortunately, Edge of Tomorrow gets so much right that something like this, I think, goes unnoticed. And that's really the, an unfortunate reality of when movies succeed on most of the levels we're used to checking the boxes for, and diversity unfortunately falls away a little bit. It shouldn't, and that's why I'm glad that J.P. Rowe brought this up. For instance, J Squad in the film, while it has some diversity, there's a black character, there's a Latina character, I think it would have been nice to show off more of how this was a global fighting force, which really you did not get that idea from the movie at all. And of course they could have made Bill Paxton's character Asian, and that would have been nice, although it would have just been more of the same of, I was very critical of the way Ken Watanabe's character was just this, the obligatory scientist in Godzilla instead of a lead role. Now, speaking of Godzilla, I was very vocal about how I felt an Asian character should have been the lead in that film, a young Asian male. And I still stand by that. And that would have been a great opportunity for Hollywood to start building some young Asian talent that can carry a movie. Because in Godzilla, everybody was going to see Godzilla. Godzilla is the star of that movie. So it gives you a great opportunity to bring in new talent and have the audience establish a relationship with that talent that would then carry over to a movie like Edge of Tomorrow. And maybe if they had brought, it would have been too late for Edge of Tomorrow, but maybe another anime turned Hollywood production, they would have had that young Asian star that suddenly had a fan base. Because Godzilla not only had Godzilla, but it had Bryan Cranston. Nobody is going in to see that movie for Aaron Taylor Johnson, so why not use that as an opportunity to bulk up and build some young male Asian talent, or young female Asian talent. We don't really have any young Asian talent working in Hollywood today. Now there's John Cho, of course, from Harold and Kumar, but he had his chance. I think he's kind of passed over at this point. It's hard to get excited about somebody who just simply has been unable to move to the next level. Of course, he is Sulu in Star Trek, but that didn't really go anywhere for him, and he doesn't really have anything to do in those movies. He's just a token character, unfortunately. And, it's something, a shame on that franchise as well for not trying to utilize its diversity either. So anyway, because, of course, as we all know, Zoe Saldana's character was sidelined in the second film, much to people's dismay. So, Star Trek isn't doing any better. But, at least they had the characters on screen, whereas Edge of Tomorrow did not. So as I said, Godzilla was a missed opportunity to start building that talent. And, there's a lot of Asian talent behind the camera in Hollywood these days. We've got Justin Lin, we've got James Wan, we have John Chu, and it's up to these directors to bring in the young Asian talent in supporting roles, very strong supporting roles, so they can make the jump to lead. Now, of course, there was Han in Fast and Furious, but, he never really had a big role in those movies. He was very, very small, and so he has not been able to make the jump either, which is unfortunate, but at least Justin Lin put him in the film. But, until one of these directors takes a really strong chance and gives an Asian actor a big, strong role, they're not going to get the lead roles. I'm very excited for Byung-hun Lee from South Korea in the next Terminator film. I think he's probably going to be the evil Terminator, which I think is a very interesting choice, a very exciting choice. He was very good in G.I. Joe Retaliation. I liked him in Red 2 as well. And so maybe he can be our big, Asian star. But Byung-hun Lee looks great for his age. He's actually in his 40s, I believe. And, you have Ken Watanabe, you have Chow Yun-fat. These actors are being brought over after they've already established their careers in Asia. And we need to see, as I'm saying, young Asian American talent brought in and developed and made into a star, a movie star. They need to find someone who has that, movie star look. With all due respect to John Cho, I just don't think that he has that movie star, just that glow. And I think they need to find, there's an actor out there, Hollywood needs to find him and start building his career now so that they don't have to keep doing this. So the talent needs to be built, and until the talent is built, you're not going to see it in a lead role. And I have to say, I would have gone for whitewashing as well with Edge of Tomorrow. I think it's just too risky, but I definitely would have brought in more diversity in the background. I think that would have been really nice to see. And not just in making Emily Blunt's character Asian, that's what they did with Pacific Rim, and I think that's a cliche at this point. We need the male characters, and we need to see them brought up. And I do, as I said, again, Godzilla, that was a really big missed opportunity, and it's unfortunate. So that's today's morning movie news. It was still 24 minutes long. I apologize. This is a process. I'm working on bringing it down, but at least as you could see, we could really delve into the top 2 stories, cover all the angles, and there was a lot to discuss today about all the stories. So I hope you enjoyed it. And again, I really would like your feedback about the new format, and I'm very excited to see what you think about tomorrow's changes. All right, so again, that's today's episode. Write down below what you thought of today's top 2 stories, the viewer question, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.